the gift of grace. Robert Mitchell had built his fortune in real estate, but at 68, all the penthouses and luxury cars couldn't fill the emptiness in his heart. His wife, Sarah, had passed 3 years ago, and they'd never been able to have children. The silence in his sprawling Connecticut home had become unbearable. One cold November evening, while walking through downtown Hartford, Robert noticed a young woman huddled in a doorway. Despite the harsh circumstances, something about her quiet dignity caught his attention. Her name was Grace, she told him softly, and she was 28 years old. Over the following weeks, Robert found himself returning to that corner, bringing coffee and sandwiches. Grace never asked for money or made demands. She simply listened with remarkable wisdom as this lonely millionaire shared his grief about Sarah, his regrets about the family they'd never had. "I would give everything I own," Robert confided one evening, "to have a child carry on Sarah's memory, to have someone to love and guide." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a gentleness that surprised them both, she made an offer that would change everything. "Mr. Mitchell," she said carefully, "I know this might sound strange, but what if I could help you with that? I've been thinking about my own future, wondering how to build something meaningful from where I am now." Robert was stunned. "Grace, I couldn't ask that of you. It would be too much." "You're not asking," she replied softly. "I'm offering, but I'd want to do this right. Proper medical care, a safe place to stay, and—" She paused. "I'd want to be part of the child's life, not as a stranger, but as family." After many long conversations and careful legal arrangements, Grace moved into the guest cottage on Robert's property. He ensured she received the best prenatal care, and slowly, an unlikely friendship blossomed between the millionaire and the young woman he'd found on the street. As months passed, Robert discovered that Grace had been a college student before a series of family tragedies and bad decisions led her to homelessness. She was intelligent, kind, and had a quiet strength that reminded him of Sarah. When Grace went into labor on a warm spring morning, Robert paced the hospital waiting room like any expectant grandfather. The nurses smiled at this distinguished, older man who was so clearly nervous and excited. Finally, the doctor emerged with news that stopped Robert's heart. "Mr. Mitchell, the baby, there's something you need to know." Robert's face went pale. "Is Grace all right? Is the baby—" "They're both fine," the doctor assured him quickly. "But the baby was born with Down syndrome. It's a beautiful, healthy little girl, but she'll have special needs." Robert stood frozen for a moment. This wasn't what he'd imagined. This wasn't the perfect child he'd dreamed of carrying on Sarah's legacy. But then he heard Grace's voice calling from the room. "Robert, would you like to meet your daughter?" When he entered the room, Grace was holding a tiny bundle, her face glowing with an exhausted but radiant smile. She looked up at him with eyes full of hope and just a hint of worry. "Her name is Sarah," Grace whispered. "I hope that's all right." Robert approached slowly, his hands trembling. When Grace placed little Sarah in his arms, he looked down at the tiny face and felt something break open in his chest. The baby opened her eyes, the same deep blue as his late wife's, and seemed to look directly at him. In that moment, Robert understood something profound. Love doesn't require perfection. It requires only an open heart. Tears streaming down his face, Robert whispered, "She's absolutely perfect." Over the following months, Robert watched Grace blossom as a mother. She moved into the main house, and together they created a loving home for little Sarah. Grace continued her education through online courses, while Robert discovered the joy of bedtime stories and gentle lullabies. Sarah's special needs brought unexpected gifts. Her laughter was pure sunshine, her hugs were uninhibited love. Her progress, though different from other children, was celebrated with twice the joy. One evening, as they watched Sarah play with her toys, Grace turned to Robert. "You know, when I was living on that street corner, I never imagined I could be part of something so beautiful." Robert smiled, watching his daughter carefully stack colorful blocks. "Grace," he said softly, "you didn't just give me a child. You gave me a family. You gave me a purpose, and most importantly, you taught me that the most precious gifts often come in unexpected packages." As Sarah clapped her hands with delight at her tower of blocks, both adults understood that love had found them all exactly when they needed it most. Sometimes what shocks us isn't what's wrong with our blessings, but how perfectly right they turn out to be.